Well, this morning we're blessed to have young Luke. He's younger than me, so I can say that. Young Luke to minister the word. So let's give him a warm welcome as he comes.
I love the way Mark does that, just young so-and-so. And I've just had another birthday and it just kind of go, not another year, God. What's happening, But it's good. It's good. I feel like this morning I should just start with some sort of official kind of announcements, Mr. and Mrs. Hutchison, honoured guests, ladies and gentlemen. That's all right. It's great to have you in the house, and Steve's been such a blessing to us, and he's such a credit to you guys, and just want to honour you for being incredible parents. And he talks to me occasionally and always just speaks so highly of you guys and what you've given him, and so we want to bless you as well as you release him into this next season. So bless you, real good, amen. All right, God, so we've been on last couple of weeks. We've had some great kind of little messages. Sue last week, if you remember, about making a difference in one person's world, and I think she used the classic starfish illustration for those of you that were here. The little boy on the sand picking up the starfish, throwing it into the water, and when he was questioned and was saying, "You foolhardy boy," he said, "I made a difference to that one." And that's, just our continued heart, just to make a difference to the ones and the twos and whoever God puts across your path. I really want to encourage you just to continue to walk that out as a church. And it doesn't have to be overly religious, just being kind to someone, giving someone a little gift or sending them a little card or saying please or thank you, or just loving on them as you cross by them, day by day. And then the previous week, Mark had a kind of great word which kind of really has got me thinking about today. But if you remember, Mark sort of started off talking about kind of our prophetic sense of times and seasons. Like you remember that? So he talked about the Kairos time and the now moment. And he talked about the fact that, that we kind of looked at Star Wars, and this old movie from the 70s is suddenly here again. And there's a reason it's here again, because it was so successful the first time. And so sometimes these creative people aren't very creative, and so they go, that really worked back then, let's do it again, because it's kind of safe. There's no risk involved now with making Star Wars. You can make another 100 Star Wars movies. They'll all make money because the little dolls and the merchandise, and it's safe. It's a safe thing to do. So, but I feel like God's kind of saying He wants to call us out of the safe. He's calling us out of the safe into the place of risk and doing new things, creating new songs, creating new sounds, doing things differently, out of the stereotype, out of the box, into something fresh and something new. Now, I don't know about you, but that scares me. Because safe is cool. I can look around me, and I'm sure you'll relate to this, Hutcho. And I'll get you up to share a bit later. About safe. You've got income, you've got a job, you've got a world that, for the large part of your life, you can control. And things are done a certain way, and that gives you some comfort and some security. And yet I feel like God's calling us out of that to live differently. So, Jeanette, could you flick up my little thing there, if you can? There it is. There it is. So I want to play a little game with you this morning. We're going to spot the difference. Who's played Spot the Difference? Yeah. Okay, so let's see how many you can grab there. Eyebrows, belly button, freckles, tongue, lily pad. Anything else? I think we got it. The leaves, yes, good spot, and shadow, yeah, shadow, yep, good. What was that? The freckles, good, attention for detail. What? White dots on the other. Like that. Beautiful, so I don't know how many we've got there, but we've got quite a few, yeah. So sometimes it's good to actually have a game of spot the difference with Scripture. And so when Mark was sharing the other week about things coming around in circles, I started to kind of get this mental picture of the Israelites walking around the walls of Jericho. And then suddenly flashed to the other scene of the Israelites wandering around in the desert. And if you want to read the story, you can read it for yourself in Numbers, sort of 14, for about 4 or 5 chapters there, and the early part of Joshua, sort of 1 to 7. But I want to just kind of reflect on that for a moment and just sort of glean some stuff out of there, and even in your own heart, you know. And the journey starts back in Egypt, and Moses knocking on Pharaoh's door saying, "Let my people go." And the promise of God to take them out of Egypt into the promised land. Now, for the large part, Egypt is pretty safe. You know, it's hard work. They're building, they're making, they're being forced labour, but it's safe, it's comfortable, it's known, you know. But there was a point where they got jack of it and said, "No, we need to get out of here." And we know the story, the plagues. And finally Pharaoh said, "Get out of here and go." And the journey through the desert begins. And it isn't long before challenge comes their way. There's no water. There's no food. And they're screaming out saying, "Moses, what have you done? Have you brought us here to die? We were better off back in Egypt." Now, you can look at that and say, who in their right mind would trade freedom to be back in slavery? It's someone who's looking for a safe place, who's looking for 3 square meals a day, even if it's only porridge. You know, a lot of prisoners in our prison system, when they get out of prison, struggle to assimilate back into the real world because prison has routine. You know, you're up at a certain time, there's breakfast, there's lunch, there's dinner, you go to bed. And so your whole life is controlled. And so when you come out into a place of freedom, you say, what do you do with yourself? How do I live? How do I do this? And so there's all of these unknowns, these uncertainties of this isn't safe. But at the same time, the Israelites had seen the hand of God, you know. They'd seen the plagues. They'd seen the waters part. And then they saw the water out of the rock, and they saw manna from heaven. And they saw the cloud by day and the pillar by night. And they walked with God a journey. And they get to this place called Kadesh Barnea. And Moses sends out 12 spies. And we know the story, you know, 10 come back and go, wow, Moses, it's an awful place. There are giants and there are all sorts of obstacles, and we're like grasshoppers in their sight. And so this negative report comes back. And negativity has a way of travelling quickly, doesn't it? And the next moment you got the whole camp in uproar. We're going to die in the wilderness. Our children are going to die in the wilderness. And Joshua and Caleb, the Bible says, were men of a different spirit. And said, we are well able. But the damage had been done. And God said, I can't take you forward. God's heart was to take him out of Egypt into the promised land. That was his promise from the beginning. Joseph was even so confident that he said, when you leave Egypt, take my bones with me and take them into the promised land. That's how confident Joseph was, long dead. And yet these people somehow, it's all too hard because this is not safe. This is risk. This is unknown. Can I trust God? Is God faithful to his promises? You know, in your life, you know, maybe you're asking questions like that. Can I trust God? The promises that he's given me, is he going to bring them to pass in my life? You're in Kadesh Barnea right now. You're in a point of decision. What do you do? Where do you go? What does this look like? But for that generation of Israelites, they wandered for 40 years in the desert. Sadly, never stepping into their destiny. Never stepping into the place of God's promise for their lives. The next generation comes along and God says, I'm gonna give you what I've promised to your parents and to your forefathers. And they cross the Jordan. And for 7 days they walk around Jericho. And the tabernacle in their midst, the place of God's presence, as they marched around the walls. And on that 7th day, as they marched around for the 7th time, they let out a mighty shout. Now, I don't know what they shouted. They could have just shouted, how God reigns, you know. Jehovah Jireh, who knows what they shouted, but they sang out praise, and the walls came tumbling down. So, little game of spot the difference. Kadesh Barnea, the first time, they spent 40 years wandering around aimlessly, wandering around in circles, without any real purpose, without any real vision, because the thing that God had promised, they couldn't believe him for. So 40 speaks of testing and trial. The second time they come to Kadesh Barnea, it's like all systems go. Bang, we're going to cross the Jordan. We're going to take Jericho. Spot the difference. Now, these are just some quick things. First of all, they walked in obedience. They failed in the desert because of their disobedience. But the second time through, they walked in obedience. The first time through, they walked without faith. The second time, they walked in faith, trusting that God was faithful to his promises. Third time, they walked around his presence. If you read there, the presence of God was always on the outskirts of the camp. This time they walked with his presence right in the midst, the ark on the shoulders of the priests, people in front, people behind, his presence firmly in the middle of where they were going. The first time they walked about grumbling and complaining. The second time they walked with joy and expectation. And finally they walked and failed to reach their destiny. But on the second occasion, if I can get my little clicker going, they walked out their destiny. Spot the difference. Spot the difference. And I'll let you, if you want to chew on that in your own time, just read those. You'll see there's lots of things there that you can glean off. So we're in this season of shift and of change. And I want to read Hebrews 12, if you want to quickly turn there, Hebrews 12:1. It says, therefore, since we're surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. Let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and the perfecter of faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, that you will not grow weary and lose heart. And the second little passage, Philippians chapter 3, verse 12, says this. Paul again writing, not that I have already obtained all this, or have already arrived at my goal, but I press on to take hold of that for which Christ took a hold of me. Brothers and sisters, I do not consider myself yet to have taken hold of it, but one thing I do, forgetting what is behind and straining towards what is ahead, I press on towards the goal to win the prize for which God has called me heavenward in Christ Jesus. I want to put those two passages side by side in a moment, but Paul starts out chapter 12 there of Hebrews, therefore. And if you know your Bible, that chapter 11 is all about the heroes of faith. So he talks about Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, David. So there's the whole gamut of the heroes of faith of the Old Testament. And then he says, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, the heroes of faith. And the heroes of faith, we note them because they went where no man had gone before. That entrepreneurial, pioneering spirit. I love Abraham. He scares me. He's minding his own business, in this place called Ur of the Chaldees, and God says, "Hey Abraham, I want you to move house. I'm going to take you to a country that I'm going to show you." Now Abraham didn't have a nice map that said, "Well, I'm here and country is there." He just walked with God, a day at a time, a step at a time. Where next, God? Where next? Where next? And Abraham is known as the father of faith, isn't he? There's just such a role model there for us. Who steps out of their comfort zone, herds, flocks, family, security? Who does that and puts himself into a place of discomfort, hardship, having to dig wells in the desert? It's not easy. But he did it out of obedience to the call that God had placed on his life. And he said, "Out of you, Abraham, I'm going to make a great nation. And through you, Abraham, all the nations of the earth will be blessed." But it came out of a man starting a journey and not knowing where he was going. See, he wasn't doing a rerun of Star Wars. He had nothing to go on. This was new. This was fresh. This was like a new place. So let's have a look at some of these contrasts. Oh, that colour ain't going to work up there, is it? So I'll have to read them up there. So this is the contrast between Hebrews 12 and Philippians 3. So I'll have to get a bit closer to read the red myself. So first of all, Hebrews says there, get serious. Throw everything that hinders. So get rid of everything that hinders you. Put everything that is getting in your way. And the sin that so easily besets us. So sin is... Well done. Thank you, Mark. It's all right. It's all right. It's good to have a good tech man up the back. It's all right. So sin is one of the things that hinders, and I think we're all aware of that. I won't need to labour that point. But if there are issues in your life that God is putting his finger on, I encourage you to deal with it. The stuff that is going to hinder you, to stop you from getting into your inheritance, that would stop you from walking out your destiny and being the man and the woman that God has called you to be. Everything that hinders. And this life is so full of distractions. That's a pretty big statement. Everything that hinders. Get rid of it. Anything that's a priority above the call of God on your life. Anything that's a priority above heaven's mandate on your life. Get rid of it. And that might be watching too much television, it might be doing too much gardening, it might be drinking too much coffee, it might be a focus on a career that is out of control. I don't know what it is, but I'm sure God is speaking to some of you right now. So what is that priority above me? Deal with it, get rid of it. Contrast that. Philippians 3, I have a goal, Paul says, press on. He says, I press on, I press forward to grab a hold of my destiny. In Hebrews he says, I run the race marked out. In Philippians he says, this goal, he says, I'm not there yet, but I'm grabbing hold of it with everything I've got. And then in Hebrews he says, how do I run? And he says, run by fixing your eyes on Jesus, your priority. And this is what Mark was talking about the other week, was again just refocusing on Jesus, re-establishing your walk, follow his example, And he says, endure hardship. Jesus, for the joy that's set before him, endured the hardship. He endured the cross. But there was a fixed purpose. There was a fixed goal. And Jesus is such an amazing example to us, you know. Even as a young man, his parents lost him one day and found him in the temple. And then when they found him, he turned around, he was surprised. He said, didn't you know I should be about my Father's business? There was this priority in his heart. I'm about my Father's business. I'm about doing what he's called me to do while I'm here. And everything is inconsequential. To the point he only said and did what he saw the Father doing. Again, a heavenly priority, a heavenly focus. Philippians says, how do we grab a hold of this goal? He said, forgetting what is behind. Which is interesting. Mark was praying that over Steve earlier. Straining for what is ahead. I press onwards to the goal. Now, at the beginning of this new year, you know, where's life at for you? Are you comfortable? Are you in safe mode? Or is God tugging at your heartstrings saying, hey, son, daughter, there's some stuff that I've been wanting you to get to, but there's been some distractions along the way. This year I want you to start to take some risk and step into what I have for you. And I've asked Steve just to come and share a little bit of his journey with us, because I was talking to him yesterday. I said, I look at you, mate, and God's hand, the way that God has brought this together has been nothing short of amazing, but it didn't come by accident. Steve,
I think he gave me 5 minutes, but bad luck now. I have the microphone here.
have as long as you want.
Okay. All right. I love this church. This is great. I love the house of God. I love the people of God. And where I've been in my old church, at Peninsula City Church, for those who don't know, I was there for 35 years. I grew up there, and a great place. A lot of formation years. But one thing I want to say to everybody is, and I say it nearly every time I preach, every time I get a microphone, is never be a victim of your past. Never be a victim. If you can't get over your yesterday, you're going to struggle stepping into tomorrow. Okay? You're really going to struggle with that. And if God wants to use you, it's like, hey, let's deal. If you need healing or emotional healing, get prayer ministry, and move forward. And be determined to move forward, because the devil wants you trapped. He wants you trapped in your past, because then you can't see a future. So it'll be, if you want to write that down, do not be a victim of your past, but use it as a testimony to your tomorrow. That torments the devil. That torments him. So the journey I had, some of you know the whole story. I'll just give you big headlines on this. But, grew up in a church. I want to honour my mum and dad a bit here today. One dad's over here, mum's over here, but, it's just where they landed. And I've got some other friends that I did church with many years ago are also here this morning. But I am who I am today as a big part of what they have sown into my life. When my unit was being built, it went 10 months late, and I lived with mum and dad for I asked for 3 or 4 weeks, it ended up being 5 months. And on a couple of my day offs, I knew my parents prayed for me. I knew they prayed for me every day. And it was my mum who taught me how to pray. And even now, I'm in my mid to late 40s now, and my parents still pray for their kids. and their kids, their grandkids. And when I was in my room there, one of my days, I had a bit of a sleep in, and so my parents do the same job in 2 different locations. So my mum and dad are lollipop people. My mum's been a lollipop lady for 40 years, so she's been very faithful. It was her prayer ground when it was quiet, and she'd march up and down and pray. So I'm the son of the lollipop people. They both pray on their crossings. They've both watched how many generations? 5 generations go across, those school crossings. However, so I'm lying in bed there one day and I could hear these words just coming out through the hallway through there. And I went down to the hallway to go through to the bathroom, and I could hear Mum and Dad praying. And they named us all. Every single one of us. Everything we were going through, they named us. They prayed for the circumstance. They prayed for our health. They prayed for our finances. I've got brothers that aren't quite walking with the Lord. Some that are, some that aren't. And they are named every day. And, that's the heritage I've been riding on all these years, is those prayers. And, there are days when, perhaps there have been tough days. But if my parents knew what I was going through, I would be riding on their prayers because I'd feel God through it. Just recently in this new job that I was at, and part of this, it says, I got a report, I'm going to read it to you, and it says Stephen had to hit the ground running in a whole new environment, in a whole new state where I didn't have any friends, I hadn't yet found a local church, and I had to deal with a suicide that happened over there. And that was a bad day. That was a tough day. A 29-year-old fellow. I walked through his home. I stood in his lounge room. His TV was still on. His guitar was leaning up against the couch. I stood in his bedroom and saw his day-to-day living, and I chose not to go and view him. But then I had to console his wife, who could barely talk, barely breathe, barely even hold a conversation. And then I held her as they carried him, wheeled him out and put him in the back of a hearse. And then I had to go back and deal with the aftermath of that. And I text my mum and dad and I said, I need you to pray. This is what I'm dealing with. I can't talk to you about it today. I'll ring you tomorrow. And I knew within minutes, I knew that I was riding on their prayers. Did it affect me? Yeah, it did. It does. Suicide affects everybody. And I'll say that out right now because we try to be politically correct. Suicide is not an answer. You do not take your life. God gives and he takes. He's the only one. Okay? Because what you do, if you've ever considered that, you dismiss it right now because you punish the people around you for the rest of their lives. You think you're ending yours, but you punish those around you. And it's wrong. It's wrong. We'll say it for you. I can't say that in the Navy. I couldn't say those words, but I can here. It's wrong. Don't do it. Get help. Get help. People want to love you. So, and through all of this, through the journey and prayer is powerful. I had a prophetic word over 20 years ago, and it's on its way on a train somewhere to WA at the moment. But it read something like this. And I was about to go to Bible college. I was on fire. I wanted to save the world. I wanted to get the credentials. I wanted to be the pastor. I wanted to have my own church. I wanted to be the new Jeff Bullock. I wanted to play piano. I wanted to do it all. And I wanted the pats on the back. I wanted the accolades. I wanted the titles. I wanted it all. And it was exhausting me. But I was young, so I kept at it. And I was full of enthusiasm, and it was great. But the prophetic word that I got out of my life is God is going to bring limitations over your life. And I went, oh, really? Limitations over your life. And you're going to have to bear it. And it went on to say, things aren't going to seem right to you, but God has a plan. And it went on, when it says, God sees the desire in your heart to have your own church down the road. But the Spirit of the Lord says, no, you wait for God to make the move. Right. And the very last line says, don't go out and make it happen, because this is the key. You then have the potential to create an Ishmael. Right? Wait for your Isaac is the promise. Now, if you don't know the story behind that, ask Mark and all them later on. That's the whole new message there. Isaac was the promised child, but Abraham didn't want to wait, so he went and had a child to somebody else and called him Ishmael. And then we're still dealing with that problem today in the Middle East as a result of that. So the prophetic word was, don't go and make it happen. And he said, other churches are going to come to you and say, we see your potential. You're not being acknowledged here, but you come to us and we'll acknowledge you. We see your gifts and your talents. And that's exactly what happened over the years. People had invitations to go and join other churches, had invitations to be the music director, invitations to be pastors, but I knew it was not right. I hadn't had a word from God, and that's the other key. When you're about to step out into something, have a word from God. It's got to be from God. I don't want to do anything without God's green light, you know? And does it mean I stop and do nothing? No, I need to be a person full of zeal, you know, and be zealous about life. Take the opportunities that come every day. Every day there are opportunities. Now, if I've got big changes, I want God right there. And so how did it change? So over the years, in 2013, I felt a little bit just unsettled in the role that I had at Peninsula City Church. I was there 8.5 years on staff as a pastor, about 18 years as a pastor. I just felt unsettled. My question was this: Lord, what's my future in ministry? Simple question. Within seconds, the word chaplaincy just bounced around my head. One word, chaplaincy. And in today's day and age, just Google it. See what Google has to say. Google's not anointed, but God uses it. And so it's an information highway. So I did that. Nursing homes, sporting clubs, schools, all looking for chaplains. Australian Defence Force, also looking for chaplains. And then when I read the description of what a chaplain was, my spirit, my heart, you know when a balloon goes off, it gives you a fright, your heart races? That's exactly what mine did. I read it. I was in the office of my own at the time, and I said out aloud, surely not. How could I see myself in this? Long story short, I'm in the Royal Australian Navy, and I have hit the ground running, and this was what I was born to do. I never grew up wanting to be in any defence force, Army, Navy, Air Force. Wouldn't have thought. My dad worked on an army base for many, many years, and we were exposed to that on and off. I'd even been down to Cerberus as a kid. Never in a fit would I ever have thought that I'd be wearing a uniform, you know. And 23 years ago, our church went down with another chaplain who was in our church at the time. And I went and I led worship down at the chapel, down at that church at St. Paul's there, as a worship leader. Quite a skinny young guy at the time I was. What happened? I had blonde hair and a goatee, you know. It's not an ounce of grey in there at all, you know. And I found that photograph just recently, and I was asked to take a service just this year down at St. Paul's, and it suddenly hit me. I'm going, my goodness, I'm standing in the same place that I stood 23 years ago as a young man, as a worship leader, and today I'm standing here as a chaplain in the Royal Australian Navy wearing their uniform. How does that happen? I had a word from God. It was a God moment. And, you know, that prophetic word that I had all those years ago didn't really give me the directions, but it gave me an understanding that God had a plan for me. And if he's got one for me, he has one for you. You know, I struggled at school. School was difficult for me. I had to work really hard. I never got high grades. I often wondered how I actually got to the next year level every year. You know, how did I passed? Really? Got to the next year level. I struggled. I was the bullied kid. And I had a school, and some of you have heard this story, I had a school reunion just last year. And I dreaded the thought of bumping into the big school bully, and there he was. And I'd been to other school reunions before. And 30 years later, I still trembled at seeing him, you know. And yet I'm my own man now. And so I bumped into him, and the nicest man I could have ever met. If he lived locally, we'd have been good friends. And he came aside, and I showed him some pictures of what I was doing, told him what I was doing, called his son over and said, wow, look at this. I went to school with this guy. Look what he's doing. Look what he's doing. Look where he's at. And he said, and I'm in the room with school teachers, police officers, all sorts. They're doing great stuff, you know. And he said, man, Steve, he said, you would be the most successful person in this room. That was out of the mouth of my school bully. That's to God be the glory, you know. Never be a victim of your past. Never be a victim of your past. A testimony to your future. And so I started over at HMAS Stirling. I was there for 3 weeks, and I've just done a 12-week stint. And this is one of the reports they got. And this I'm humbled. I'm continually humbled. My self-esteem would never put me in the pedestal that I find myself on. So this is where it is. Chaplain Hutchison, who is new to service, reserve chaplain, normally based at HMA service, was brought over to Stirling to assist with chaplaincy coverage while the permanent chaplains were away on courses. This meant that Chaplain Hutchison not only required to adapt to a new context, but also to hit the ground running. Chaplain Hutchison proven to be more than a match for this challenge. Specifically, Chaplain Hutchison's easygoing nature and affirming style has seen him assimilate quickly in the chaplaincy team. More importantly, his professional approach and application of previous life experience. See that? It's shown. Previous life experience is now not my weakness, it's now my strength. Previous life experience has gained the trust and respect of both the members with whom he has dealt and command. Throughout the reporting period, it has been observed on more than one occasion that Chaplain Hutchison has a well-developed understanding of pastoral care and practice, which has proven to be a valuable asset to our team. This is especially true when dealing with complex cases or upsets and walk-ins. However, Chaplain Hutchison has not rested on his ability, but has proven to be eager to learn by taking every opportunity afforded him for mentoring and support from more experienced chaplains. In this way, it has shown a real desire to continue to contextualise his excellent ministry knowledge into the military environment. Although Chaplain Hutchison's posting was not a permanent one, he has gone out of his way to gain as much experience as possible by readily taking on new challenges. His chaplaincy at Stirling has afforded him new challenges, all of which have been undertaken with zeal. That's important. Zeal and professionalism. In this, he has been seen not to only rise to any challenge given him, but also actively seek out new opportunities. This willingness to go outside his comfort zone has proven to be a great asset in assigning him tasks. Chaplain Hutchison has always been displayed the ability to be responsive to direction and correction, and takes approach responsibility for his actions, and to his credit, really seeks assistance when he's faced with matters he is unsure of. This has meant that he can not only be relied upon to get the job done, but get it done well. Throughout his time at Stirling, Chaplain Hutchison has proven himself to be a valuable member of the team, able to adapt to new challenges quickly. He is a highly professional chaplain who would be a great asset in permanent Navy should the opportunity arise. I was there for 3 weeks and got that report. That humbled me. I could not get a school report that good. That's to God be the glory. That's to God be the glory. I humbled, and I took a picture of that and I sent that to Mum and Dad, and they were going, "Wow, that's our boy." So the years of formation, the tough years that I felt so many times over the years overlooked. Yet I had some opportunity, but overlooked. I didn't feel honoured. I didn't feel. This morning, Mark, is one of the things back in the deep back part of my heart. Yearned for, to have those words, "We honour you, Steve." That really meant a lot to me this morning, Mark, and I thank you for hearing God, because God knows what I need and God knows what it's going to take for me to go forward. And there was a part of me, not arrogantly, not in an arrogant way or a puffed up way, but it was something, just this little part in my heart that needed to have those words said. "We honour you, Steve," because I've not had that before. I've not had those words before, and I thank you for that. I thank you for that. Moving forward, I have a whole new church family. Now I'm going across, I'm leaving another church family. I'm leaving my own family, my brothers, my nieces, my nephews, my home that was comfortable. And there is a sense of emotion saying goodbye to all of that, but there's an amazing sense of excitement going across to the other side. I always joked about, I'm in the reserve. If they need me over at Perth, I'm happy to go to Perth. And I kept on throwing the word Perth out. I never said Sydney or Darwin. I should have said Hawaii or something like that. I don't know. But I always sort of said the word Perth. And that's where I've landed. See, in the spiritual realm, God's already gone before you. And so there are things ahead. I'm honoured. I'm sitting in on command meetings that the captain of the base knows me by name, a lovely Catholic lady, and she calls me a happy clappy. When I was introduced to her, I said, she said to the other chap, what kind of flavour is he? And because, a lot of Catholics only think that's all there is Catholic. And she's a lovely lady. And I said, I'm Pentecostal. And she goes, oh, he's not one of those happy clappies, is he? And I said, well, I keep my claps to myself when I need to. And, you know, and so I had gained her trust because she was the one who called me to deal with this suicide issue that I had to deal with. And I get to share. See, I'm not allowed to openly share the gospel. I'm not allowed to do that. It's called proselytizing. Even though I am a chaplain, I'm not allowed to win souls. Right? And I went, okay, if that's your rule, God's bigger than your rule. God is much bigger than your rule. And I'd say with all my might, I'm discovering all the Christians on board. There's a number of Pentecostal Christians on that base. And I'm finding them all one at a time. And I don't have to be on a base to pray for a base. You know, and so I need you guys to pray for me. There's a lot more I could say, but, you know, the journey that God's beyond, the two things I want you to remember. Don't be a victim of your past. Get a word from God. What was the word that God said to me? It was a clunk in my spirit. In Leviticus chapter 26, it said to me these verses. It says, if you, the first word, if you, me, obey. 3 words. If you obey, then it goes, I, God, will, promise, I will give, it's all yours, you, seasonal rains. If you obey. And that is when God gives you a word. Don't make your Ishmael. Okay. You know, I don't know how many people say, God told me this, God told me that. Never really was a God told me. Because there was no fruit of that. Now, have we made that mistake before? Yep. I've done that. Does God still love me? Yep. He helped me up when I fell. You know, he encouraged me. In fact, he probably still gave me what I wanted. It was not my perfect will, but I see your heart. But get a word from the Lord. That is the most important thing. And when you get a word, I did boot camp. And I used to say so many times, you may as well have put Mr. Bean in a uniform to try and teach him how to march. Because that was as good as I was, you know, and the senior officer who's teaching says, come on, chaplain, get with it. And he said, you damn chaplains, you're all the same. None of you can march. I had to jump off diving boards 3 metres. I was so scared. I don't like heights. And I wasn't, you know, when you go to jumping something, you like to look where you're going. No, you're not allowed to look. You've got to look straight ahead and wonder when you're going to hit the bottom, you know. And I had to do a swim test, and I thought, man, I'm going to die. I'm going to drown. And, you know, when God calls you to something, he'll equip you to do the work that he's called you to do. You know, I look back and I went, how did I get through that? How did I get through that? I did more devotional reading and prayer all through that time than I ever did before. And it sustained me. I did it because God called me to do it. So in that season of moving forward, you know, if you're in 2016 and want to be used, pray the words like this: Lord, I want to be significant in your kingdom. Be significant. That's a great word to use. Be significant. Significant doesn't mean you have a title. Significant doesn't mean you get shouted your praises. You might be someone in the background who's just an incredible prayer person. You might be someone in the background who has got a bit of money, who can bless people here and there. No one ever knows where it's coming from. But you are a significant person. I have had significant people in my life. It blew me away. I was there 3 weeks in the chaplaincy there at Stirling, and then I went back for 12, and I was overwhelmed and humbled by people coming to the door, and I could hear them say this: I want to make an appointment to see the chaplain, and I want to see the new one. I was getting all the appointments suddenly after about 2 weeks. Word had gone out. And you know why? The difference was, and I don't want to dishonour the other chaplains, they all do a great job, but some of them give information. Mine was, I was able to give them information with compassion. And the secret with that, no, it's not a secret. What happens with that, if you're filled with compassion, what happened every time Jesus was filled with compassion? A miracle took place. So if someone walks into my office and they're telling me a hard story, I want to come across compassionate and not jump into fix-it mode, but be compassionate and journey with them and follow them up. See, in some of these areas and the experiences that I've had in our tradition, We're very good with pastoral care. We follow people up. Others don't. It's crisis managed. We only deal with them when they come to you. So I've said, I've got a string of people I want to follow up. And they go, what do you mean you want to follow up? I went, I want to see how these people are journeying. They came and saw me, a life-controlling problem. I want to see how they're travelling. Oh, no, don't create more work. If they want you, they'll come. And the amount of calls where it was, because I had compassion, was, I'm so glad you rang. It was not a good day. How many lives maybe have I rescued through that compassion that Jesus does? You know, I'm Jesus' representative there. This is not about me. I could never have climbed. This was not on my radar, but God's trusted me to go there, and I'm incredibly privileged. I'm incredibly honoured to be there. I'm incredibly honoured to be part of this journey here at Jubilee. I went across to Sound City Church over in WA, and I said, Lord, as I go in, because now I'm the new person. I used to be in charge of welcoming new people. Now I'm the new person, and I knew, wow, I don't know anybody. How am I going to connect here? And I thought, oh, well, this won't take long. I'll start chatting. And so I met the senior pastor, and on the first Sunday I went in and said, Lord, encourage me today.